Hi, I'm Ann with Clinton Parkway Nursery, and we're doing a series of workshops on YouTube for this season so that you'll be safe and you can listen to them whenever you want at home. We're at the corner of Clinton Parkway and Wakarusa in Lawrence, Kansas. So if you're driving by, look for the flowers on the roof. That's kind of our trademark. We're going to talk about berries. And so what I'm going to do for this segment is I'm going to talk generally to start with. I'm going to talk about where to plant them, how to prepare the soil, fertilizing, watering, that type of thing. And then I will talk about blackberries. Actually, I'm going to put them in this order: blackberries, blueberries, raspberries, and strawberries. So if you want to hear about blueberries and strawberries, you can fast forward to, when you hear the blueberry part, then you can fast forward to the strawberry part, and you don't have to listen to something you don't want to listen to. So that's kind of how I'm going to do it. So let's just talk general. As with all your plants, whether it's the landscape plants or whether it's fruiting plants, the better the soil, the better the plant's going to do for you. If this plant has the potential to produce 50 berries a year, you're not going to get 75. But you may not get 50 if you don't have ideal conditions. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to maximize potential. And so the better the soil, the better the plant's going to be on that. So keep that in mind. Now cite all of these berry crops, all of your, and this applies to a lot of stuff. Let's say mainly your edibles on this, whether it's fruit trees or berries or your garden. They want a lot of sun. These are plants that want full sun. So pick a site that has full sun. Pick a site that, if you know this spot over here has really poor soil and this spot over here has better soil, you may choose the one that has better soil so that you've got a little jump on getting things started. Think about things like, where is your water hydrant? How far are you going to have to haul water to get to these plants? You may say, well, once a tree's established, it doesn't need water. Well, you're right. But the first year or two, you're going to have to water it. And if it's on the back 40 and you have to haul water, you're not going to be happy. So think about where the water is. Think about how far away from the house is it. Can I put it closer to the house so I don't have to go so far to harvest or to take care of it, so it's not out of sight, out of mind. So those are, location. Okay, then the soil. Okay, now we have, we don't have the greatest soil in the world, but we don't have the poorest soil in the world. We can grow things. We may have to work out a little more than California or Oregon, but we can still grow things. But the better the soil is, the better the plant's going to do. So with all of these, amend the soil. The more organic matter you can get in the soil, the better the plant's going to do. Cow manure, a lot of people talk about it being a great fertilizer. Cow manure is not a fertilizer at all. Cow manure is organic matter. And so what happens is, if the soil is good, then the plant can just send the roots out and send the roots out. When it sends the roots out, let's just say it sends out roots twice as far as it normally does. Well, there is twice as much fertilizer and twice as much water that the plant can take up, so you're going to get more growth. So you think, oh my gosh, this was the greatest fertilizer in the world. It isn't a fertilizer. It's just making the soil better on that. Fertilizer is something you definitely should do, but it is preparing the soil. So organic matter is what you want to add, and it's something that on the berries and on fruit trees and things like that are perennial, that come back year after year, the better the soil is prepared right now, the better the plant's going to do down the road. Because you can add somewhat, like in top dress, but you can't go in and till in a bunch of compost next year because you have this plant and you don't want it to die. So if you have a compost pile, that's great. If you don't, I would suggest either one of two things. I would suggest the cotton burr compost or the Fox Farm raised soil conditioner. Now, if you're needing a lot, I would probably suggest doing the cotton burr compost because of the price on that. But it's excellent for breaking up our clay soils. It helps put some organic matter into the soil. If you look at it closely, it's chunks and pieces. And I think that's part of the key because it doesn't break down really quickly. The Fox Farm soil conditioner is a really fine mix. It can be used too. It's a little bit more expensive. I love it for vegetables, but it can also be used for gardens. If I'm going to do something, I'm not going to have the potential to, I don't have the space to do two, then do one. If you're only doing vegetables, if that's your main one, do the soil conditioner. If most of it's the berries, then go ahead and do the cotton burr compost. I don't care what you do, but get some organic matter in there. And like I say, the more the better. Okay, now as far as as far as spacing and stuff like that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to refer you to the K-State planting your fruit tree or planting your fruit garden on that. And what it does, there's several publications that I'm going to talk about today that are excellent publications because they're written for Kansas. So they'll talk about here, they even break it down and say this is a good northeast Kansas. When you get into this publication, it will tell you, it's got the fruit crop, like it says blackberry, and then it'll say whether it's the erect or trailing. It'll tell you the approximate space per plant, the minimum spacing, actually how much fruit you can expect to get, and how long it should last for you on that. So it'll give you a guide depending upon what you're going to plant and what kind of space you have. So you kind of have an idea with that one. This is available. You can get it on the internet. It's also available through the Extension Office. If you want on the internet, just type in K-State Extension Publications and then go to berry or vegetables, I think it is, and it'll have it there. So it's a really excellent handout. So that'll tell you your spacing, okay? Watering and planting, all right? The first year is most crucial. It isn't established. This is a plant, especially these berries and fruit trees and things like that. These are plants that will be there year after year after year. So obviously they're not as big as they potentially will be. And they won't be that big at the end of the season. So you want to get them started. The food crop is kind of secondary the first year or the second year because you're trying to get them established. So when you plant them, I would suggest using the Fertilome Root Stimulator. It's a liquid that you mix with water, and what it has in it, it has the hormones the rooting hormones that the plant produces naturally. It'll have vitamins in it, and they find that the vitamin combined with the hormones produce roots faster than each one independently on that. And it has a little bit of fertilizer. I'm not worried about the fertilizer. I want the roots to grow. You have more roots, you're going to get more top. So I suggest you use this probably the first 4 to 6 weeks after you plant it. Roughly about every 7 to 10 days. How much you use will depend on the size of the plant you get. We tell people if it's in a #1 pot, which is kind of like a 1 gallon, you're going to use a gallon of solution. If it's in a 5-gallon pot, you're going to use 5 gallons of solution. So you want to get it off to a good start, and that's what the root stimulator does. Okay, and that is pretty much what I would suggest the first year. After that, you can do different types of fertilizers. I'm going to say do a granule because that's the easiest. There's two ways to do granules. Okay, get this nuts out of here. You've got this one, you've got some granules that you put down, and this is good for about 4 to 6 weeks. So what they'll recommend is that you repeat about once a month on that. It's an easy way to do it. The first of the month, go out and give them a handful of fertilizer. How much, it will tell you based on the size of the plant. So follow directions, okay? The garden coat, the Fertilome Garden Coat, is a slow release, and the good thing about it is this one lasts for 4 to 6 months. So you could put it down once in the spring, and then you're done for that year on that. So that's an easy way to do it if you're like, I'm not going to remember to do it once a month. That's an excellent way to do it. But you want to fertilize because you want to, again, maximize growth. You maximize growth, you're going to get bigger production, and then that's the whole point of doing this is to get fruit on that. So you're going to fertilize, okay? Watering is going to be very difficult to tell you how often to water and how much. Roughly, they're going to say about 1 inch a week, which doesn't tell you anything. So remember, these are plants that are going to be permanent. They're going to have a deep root system. So when you want to water deeply on that. That encourages, if the roots aren't deep, that encourages them to go down. It encourages them to, instead of putting a little bit on every day, you're encouraging them to go down so that you don't have to take care of them every day. And a good deep soaking, and it's better to water deeply once or twice a week rather than every single day. That's encouraging it to send down deep root systems. And you want it eventually that you don't have to supplement the water. And eventually that will be the case unless we have a super hot, dry year. So initially the first year, maybe the second, you're going to have to put it on a pretty regular watering schedule to supplement it. But once it gets established, unless it's a very dry year, you're probably okay. Mulching is an excellent way. Mulch does so many things for you. It'll help keep the weeds down, which the weeds are competition for nutrients and moisture on that. Also, the wrong weed is going to get as tall as the plants. So you want to keep the weeds down. That's a great way to keep it down. It also keeps the soil cool. It also helps hold the moisture in. So it does a lot of things for you. In the winter, it'll help with cold. It won't be quite as cold, the plant won't, or the roots won't, so that it can get through maybe a severe winter or a dry winter better than it would if it didn't have the mulch. Harvest, all of these berries, let's say, are ones that when you go to harvest them, you want to take out something like a cardboard flat, something very shallow. Don't stack them up. You go get apples, you can take a 5-gallon bucket filled with apples, no big deal. You're not going to get 5 gallons of berries. But if you had a situation you can get 5 gallons of berries, you put them in a 5-gallon bucket, 3/4 of them are going to be smashed. So you want to have them, you want to have something that you're going to carry them in that is very shallow so you don't stack them on top of each other. Harvest earlier in the day, you get a little better flavor. But if you can only do it after work, do it after work. Try to do it when the fruit is not wet on that. That'll help for disease and not disease, but molding and rotting quicker on that. All of the berries are fruit that are very short lifespan. So as soon as you can get them harvested, get them into the refrigerator so that you can keep them as long as you potentially can. They may not make it to the refrigerator because they taste too good, but if you do have some left over, get them in the refrigerator, get them in the freezer so they can keep as long as possible. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with each individual crop and talk about it. So if you want to hear, I'm going to start with blueberries. If you want to hear something different, then fast forward to, I'm doing them in alphabetical order. That way you can remember. Okay, blueberries. Blueberries are a crop that they are very cold hardy. They can do very well here. However, they like a pH of about 4 to 5. Our pH is probably in the 7, 8, possibly even 9 range. So the ideal situation with blueberries is that you work on the soil this year and plant them next year, because it's very difficult to drop the pH down drastically in one season and have it consistent. So the thing to do would be decide where you want them. If you really, really want one this year, what I would suggest doing is putting in a raised bed or digging out the area and almost put straight peat moss back in. Remember that straight peat moss is going to drain fairly quickly when you water, so keep that in mind for the water situation. But let's say you're going to put them in the ground, okay? Work up the soil, till it up, put some organic matter in it. To bring the pH down, you need to use soil sulfur, okay? Basically it's sulfur and helps bring the pH. Work up your soil, till it up, put some compost in it, and actually what I would do then is take a soil test. Take it to the extension office, you can get a soil test, and then you know where you're at. Okay, for this example, let's say that you're at 7.5. All right, you get the test back. I'm at 7.5. I got to get down to 4. Okay, the sulfur says 1 to 2 pounds per 100 square foot. So let's put 2 pounds per 100 square foot. So we do that, we work it in, we water it in 2 or 3 months. Let's go get another soil test. Oh, we're at 6.5. So you know that roughly 2 pounds per 100 square foot is going to drop you down a number. So you're at 6, you want to go to 5, you want to go to 4. So that means if you're doing this right now, you do it in the spring. I'm going to do it again in the fall. I'm going to do it next spring before I plant. I should be close to where I need to be. If you want to make sure that you are after that, well, hey, I should be at 4.5, then get another soil test and check. And then I would reapply this each year. I would either reapply it and actually I could say use a fertilizer like ammonium sulfate, not aluminum sulfate. Aluminum sulfate's toxic to blueberries. But the ammonium is nitrogen, which is what they want, and the sulfate is the sulfur, which helps bring the soil pH down. Or actually you've got it down, it's trying to maintain it. So you're going to do that. If you don't do the ammonium sulfate, you need to do the soil sulfur each year, because we're in Kansas and it's going to go up on that. So that's probably it's not the trickiest, but it is the trick to growing blueberries in Kansas. They're very hardy. They're hardy to zone 4, and we're actually in zone 5 or 6, depending on who you talk to. So they can take our cold very, very well, but they can't always, they don't like the high pH soil. There's different varieties of blueberries. If you get a couple, you're going to have a couple different varieties. You're going to have better fruit. You're going to get some cross-pollination. They're going to do well. When you go to prune them, you're going to thin out the dead on that. They'll have a lot of dead or old canes, and you can tell old canes in the spring when you look at them. They're a browner, they're a darker. They're going to grow best on younger wood, so trim out the old. A blueberry plant will probably get about 3 to 4 foot tall on that. You may read some things that says 5 to 6, and it does some places, but not usually around here on that. They are a plant, they're kind of unusual. They do not have root hairs, so sometimes they will benefit immensely from some supplemental water. And that's where mulch helps a lot, because you're helping hold some of that moisture in on that. Planting different varieties, you have cross-pollination. You can also stagger it so that you have them ripening at different times, so you could have blueberries on your cereal for a long time in the spring, summer on that. So that's kind of blueberries. Okay, the next thing we're going to start with is blackberries. And I'm going to grab another publication. K-State has a publication on raspberries and blackberries. That's a very good publication. It will talk about varieties, which is good. It'll also talk, because I'm not going to delve on it very much. It has a section on pruning that I'm going to say get into that, because there are different pruning methods, and it will tell you that. And it's one of those things that, you know, they write books on raspberries and blackberries, so there's no way I'm going to cover it in 20 minutes or whatever time it takes me. So they have guides, and they have pictures on how to trim them, because on all of them, blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries, it's very beneficial to get that old wood out of there. It's not going to produce. You get it out of there. That's wood that the plant would send up food and energy to, that it's not going to produce any fruit. You get rid of it, it'll produce fruit on the canes that are going to produce, or I mean, it'll give food to the canes that are going to produce food. So pruning is very important. Also, blackberries, there are thornless blackberries. If you remember blackberries as a kid and think, oh, they got thorns, I don't want them. So there are some that are thornless. They do not sucker very well, like compared to raspberries. So you're going to plant plants where raspberries will sucker and fill in. They can do, I can't remember what it's called, but basically the cane will come over and touch the ground and root and produce a new plant for you. So you can get new plants that way too. That they have a lifespan, so they won't, after a while, they aren't going to produce as well as they used to. So you can say, okay, I've got new ones started, I'm going to get rid of the old one on that. The water and fertilizer is going to be similar to what we talked about, nothing special as far as that goes. Blackberries are one that when you harvest them, the core comes with the fruit. So you'll have the blackberry fruit with the core in it, and that's fine, just eat it. Compared to the raspberry, which is just a hollow piece. And it's kind of like the ones you get in the grocery store. When it's ripe, taste them on that. And you'll know that they're plump. They also pull from the plant fairly easily. If they're not quite ripe, they're hard to pull or hard to harvest. So remember, a shallow box, and then harvest, I'm going to say, quickly, and get them inside in a cool environment so that they'll last longer for you. Okay, blackberries, blueberries, raspberries. Okay, raspberries are similar to blackberries. They do have a tendency to sucker, where a lot of them don't. And also, backing up a little bit, there are thornless raspberries too. And raspberries come in, most of the time you think of red, but there's also black raspberries, and there's yellow raspberries, and I believe there might be a white raspberry too on that. The colored ones, the reason people will want those a lot of times is for birds. The yellow ones, the birds don't seem to see as well as the red ones. I don't know if they're colorblind for those colors or what, or maybe they don't realize they're raspberries and don't want to eat them. But raspberries will sucker, and you want to keep the suckers in bounds, because if you just let them go, what happens is you end up with an 8 or 10 foot bed that's wide, 8 or 10 foot wide, and you can't get to the middle to pick on that. So either say, this is my spot, I'm going to have it 3 foot or 4 foot wide, whatever your number is. You can trellis it. A lot of people will trellis. Raspberries have a tendency to do this flop thing, and they will trellis it so that the raspberries grow up, and then they can reach them and harvest them and take care of them a little bit easier on that. It's just a matter of personal preference what you want to do. There are raspberries, and actually blackberries also, that are they bloom they produce in the spring for you and produce again in the fall, so you can get 2 crops off of them. They are one that when the plants that what do I say? The canes produce. The canes are 2-year-old when they produce. The first year they grow, the second year they produce fruit. When they're done producing fruit, you cut them off to the ground, get rid of them, let the new ones come up. So you want some new canes to come up each year so that you have a crop. They're very tasty if you ask me, but they are very prone to squishing because when you harvest them, you harvest just the berry. It doesn't have the core in it, so it doesn't have any substance to hold it up. On that. There's also different varieties of raspberries too, so you can extend, and blackberries, so you can extend your season if you want to on that. Okay, and the same thing with harvesting on the red ones, or well, on the yellow ones, the white ones too. Watch the color. They start out green and then they'll start to turn, and when they turn, you start to turn, you say, okay, again, you can pull them. If they pull easy, they're ripe. Taste them. See if they're as ripe as they can. You'll want to pick them probably about every day, every other day, because they'll ripen quickly. If you can put some water on all of these plants a little bit as they're producing, as they start to bloom and set fruit, you're going to get either more or longer or bigger fruit crop, or all of those, as far as a little tip for it. The fourth one is strawberries. K-State does have a publication on strawberries that's pretty nice. So you can look it up the same place, and it has quite a bit of information, probably more than I'm going to say because I'm limited in time. But on strawberries, there's everbearing and there's June-bearing. Okay, everbearing means it continues to bloom through the summer. June-bearing produce around the first part of June, May to June. When you plant strawberries, what you're going to do is you're going to plant the plant and you're going to keep the fruit off of it. That's very crucial. Okay, you're going to plant it in the ground. They will runner for you. They will produce more plants. So the runner is a baby plant that shoots out on a stem. It's called a runner. And once you get strawberries established, you shouldn't ever have to buy another strawberry plant because they'll keep producing. What you're going to do, and this is going to be the second year, because the first year you're going to plant them, they're going to spread, you're not going to let them fruit. In the second year, then what you're going to do is they're going to grow, they're going to produce, and then after they're done producing, and this is June bearing, what you want to do is you're going to take, if it's in the ground, the easy way to do it is just take your lawnmower and mow the tops and get rid of the leaves. If they're in a raised bed, you can take a head shears and just cut them back. You don't want to mess with the crown, the base of the plant, but you can put the lawnmower on high and you won't hurt the crown. You're getting that off of there, and then what you're going to do is you're going to thin this plant, thin this bed, so that the strawberries will produce best with young plants. So you're trying to keep young plants. So you're going to get rid of old ones. You're not going to get rid of all of them because then they're going to runner for you. So if it's in the ground, an easy way is just take the center of the bed and till it or get rid of everything, and then let the ones that are left send babies out into the middle. Next year, the year after that, you'll do one side, and then the following year you'll do the other side. And so in a 3-year rotation, you're going to have all new plants. A strawberry plant will produce about a pint of strawberries per plant. So you want to do this so that they're young plants so you can get maximum production on that. You won't fertilize these in the spring because you'll have mushy fruit. You fertilize the strawberries in August and September on that. It's crucial in the winter. They're very winter hardy, but early on they're not. So you want to make sure that it hardens. You harden them off. Get it cold. Let it get cold. Let it get cold. Let it get cold. And then either mulch them with like straw. You can use a ground cover cloth, something to give them a little bit of protection in the winter. As it comes out in the spring, you have to be careful. You don't want to uncover them too soon, because if we get some of our hard spring frosts, it starts to come out of dormancy, and that's a tender plant that's going to die because it could take 20 below when it was used to it, but all of a sudden it's been exposed to some 60s and 70s, and it can't take that teen temperature again. So keep it handy so that you can cover it up again on that. And with strawberry and the everbearings, you're not going to do the dividing like you did. You will somewhat, but you don't want to do it as drastic because those plants are going to produce all summer long. You will take some out so they can runner and make more plants, but they don't spread or do runners as much as the Juneberry. And then pretty much you'll overwinter them and fertilize them the same as you did the Juneberry. So that's kind of strawberries in a nutshell. So that's the 4 berries we talked about. If you have some questions or some concerns, or I want to learn more, give us a call. We'll be able to help you. Come on in, stop in, and we'll answer your questions for you. Thanks for listening.